They executed so many times. And now you have Noah in and you still pick it. I mean, KT are really trying to force the issue here, as it will be the Nico top. Tristana, Rel bot lane. Orianna, of course, was going to be mid. BDD has great ball carrier. They have insane attract repel synergy with the Tristana, with the Olaf. I haven't really myself had a ton of experience with watching Nico and Dinar, that matchup in the vacuum, so I can't speak as an expert as to how that is going to go, but I feel like the way you could set up team fights with Pop Blossoms, Magnet Storms, and the Shockwave that you're always going to have a great ball carrier for, feels like this comp is too big to fail for Gen.G.
Yeah, you know, I like that they bring in something prepared because, as you mentioned before, like Doran is going to play Gnar if you leave that available. It's blind pickable. It's definitely something that they must have practiced in scrims. Like, okay, what do we do if we're going up against blind pick Gnar? Are we just gonna, you know, do something standard, or maybe we throw in something new into the mix? So I like that Rascal is kind of flexing with this one, and we'll see how it goes as we are gonna hop onto the Rift here for game number 1, match 80. After this, we only got 10 more.
Yeah.
Then we hit playoffs. We're getting pretty close now.
Very, very close, in fact. I feel like Gen.G have really liked to experiment a lot here in these last few weeks of play. You know, the Shogath to now the Nico. And it's interesting to see because playoffs are looming, and in some ways you'd feel like if you wanted to use a strategy like this, you might want to hide it, but instead showing this against KT makes you wonder how Gen.G really feel about this. Do they think it's really strong, or is it just a curveball to try to secure that maximum 2-game score +2? Because right now Gen.G are racing Hanwha Esports for that second spot. Hanwha's remaining opponents are Fredit Brion and T1. Gen.G has DRX after this, so you want that +2 because it is going to be very close at the end of the day.
We have so many biscuits on the side of Gen.G. Lots of inspiration on their side.
Yes.
Of course, Dove also has that. It's just becoming more and more popular. It's just so good. Gives you a lot of sustain in the lane. You get to go for some other nice thing. We see a lot of Cosmic Insight from time to times, but not so much in this game. Lucidity Boot's very popular. You can get a ton of ability haste with, you know, the combo of those two things.
Okay, well, this is just how this goes. Crash down into the Alistair. At level 1, he hits 2, and then you can't do it anymore.
I feel like I've seen this somewhere before.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So Samira's the big nerf to Samira was actually the duration on her Blade Whirl. So that's just to talk about why she fell out of power, I guess. I think it was even a half a second duration that was removed, which in the world of League of Legends is massive, because before you could just kind of leave it out there. You could almost pre-use it and you'd be pretty safe against a lot of different things. She can't ult twice in a team fight basically ever. That's not a thing anymore, but that was a very rare occurrence. We saw it only once in the LCK where that was actually a thing. But she had a pretty low win rate in the LCK even leading up to that nerf, so that was the main reason why she just completely fell out. It's like, okay, well now she's even less survivable. This is going to be the end of Samira, and you know, she's back in this series, but I still don't trust it. Not yet.
Yeah, especially when you're giving it to kind of an unproven AD carry that's coming in here in a very difficult matchup against one of the best AD carries of all time. You know, like that kind of makes things a little bit more difficult. So definitely very curious. We'll have to keep our eye on the bottom side, you know, with Tristana and the rise of Tristana with so many Kai'Sa picks, and that being a counter, maybe looking for a counter to the Tristana, as I will be the strongest laner in the LCK. That is his determination here.
Well, you know, we've got players like Duckdom, Ghost.
I mean, he even
Ruler.
said strongest laner.
Yeah.
So not even like 80 carry player.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm going to be better than Chovy. Well,
look at this.
you have some some work to do.
By the way, look at these stats. 9 loss streaks, Samira Alistair. 4 of the 9, almost half, for KT Rolster. Yeah. So they've played this more than anyone. And, you know, both Chronicler and myself, I mean, I think even Atlas and you, I think I've cast quite a few of those games with Atlas, as it turns out, but we were all kind of critical of this pick, especially when leaving the rel open and trying to counter it, because it's just so difficult to do. It's difficult to pull off, and it sometimes does feel like KT's read on the meta is in the past, right? And it feels like they're living around this early Gnar priority a little bit too much. As you can see, the top matchup in terms of the CS is obviously going Rascal's way for the time being. It's going to become a little bit better. He built Magic Resist early on, too, to help out with that. So kind of a rare thing to see. It's going to be useful against the Orianna, too, so not completely useless to have that just because of the lane. But it slows down Gnar's build a little bit. Any Merc Treads come through and it's being all right.
But it's coming in here. He wants to challenge on the Raptors. Gideon doing a decent job, actually, but not able to get the majority of those. And we actually had, with the Prowl on the bot side, Life was able to just waltz on into the enemy jungle. Feels pretty good about that. So nice little steal on the Raptors. Clid is immediately going to go to his own Raptors. BDD has no idea that Gideon has wrapped around here. Stun comes down. There is the spear, and BDD is just dead. Looks like they were maybe trying to hand that over to Dove, but at the end of the day, a very clean and easy kill for KT.
Yeah, BDD desperately flashes and then walks towards Clid as if he's hoping something can happen, and Clid's like, I am not going to interrupt my Raptor take for this. I'm sorry, you are definitely deader than dead. No vision in that brush to push up that far is a small mistake that has a massive consequence for BDD. And I mean, you could slow this back down all you want, but the damage is done.
Yeah. It's, you know, he just saw Nidalee down the bottom side, and he knows that Krugs are available. As it looks like Life might be going down here. He is going to flash away. Now an Aftershock is down, and with the exhaust coming in, they'll force that heal as well. No kill, but, you know, a good trade of the summoners do come in. And Gideon is actually being very active. But, you know, on that gank in the mid lane, he just saw him on the Raptors, and they know the Krugs are up. So you never expect Gideon to just go for the super fast wraparound gank, you know? Yeah. So I think BDD was just not expecting it at all.
Zeus here, too, on this bottom side. I mean, it was a really nice setup, potentially, to you know, parry that first gank into a second one here on the bottom side because of the, you know, push and where the lane was. I think this is going to be the replay of BDD, who has, again, no vision, and you don't expect Gideon to be here. And then it's just a very easy stun setup here. And Dove doesn't get the kill, but that's all right. You could see Clid was like, sorry, man, nothing I can do about that one.
They actually had a ward on the Krugs. So I think at that point in time, like, you had about 2 seconds to react and be like, hey, you didn't go to Krugs. This is a little bit weird. Maybe I should play a bit more passively. So it was a good bait from Dove as well. You know, he was taking a lot of damage straight on the chin, and I think BDD was getting a little bit excited. That's kind of what led to it.
Not to mention he was super low on mana. You know, you feel really safe when he has almost no mana. You're like, can he even hit a second skill on me? Like, you know he can, you know, toss out the stun, Scare of the Weak, but are you really going to be able to follow up? I mean, that's where you feel a little bit too safe. Dove going to grab this blue buff. And so far, this game has been relatively uneventful, though, otherwise, with the Olaf versus Nidalee. You know, we haven't been able to see Clid get control back of the game yet, and hasn't been able to get that early Mountain Drake we so often see, unfortunately for him. So tempo a little bit slower than what Olaf would necessarily like here. Not going to be able to try to force double objectives like we saw in the previous series.
You know, this would have been a great game for Gideon to go Moonstone, or even Moonstaff, but Korean junglers that play Nidalee do not build that item.
Yeah, almost.
Sorry, guys. I don't even know if we've seen it even once.
I think maybe literally once.
We've mentioned it like so many times, but I just think it doesn't happen. I think Moonstone got like a slight nerf along the way. I think it's still good. As Duff, you know, getting on in there. Because it's such an obvious verdant barrier game against Nidalee Center, right? And if you can go for more supportive builds, you know, you kind of negate some of that MR that they're building in that sense, and you support your team a bit more.
Yeah.
Not going to build it here, which is no surprise, of course, in the LCK.
Sure. But, you know, Night Harvester is still good and it's still fun. I like it.
It does damage.
It does damage.
So I better build it.
I mean, it's Nidalee's function oftentimes in the late game is to hit a few spears to set up. I mean, she's not unlike Zoe in that regard. She can't 100-0 someone very easily, but you hit a few spears and then suddenly everyone's softened up. The finishing power is definitely there. With something like a Samira, like it works really well with Samira's finishing. With her ultimate, the ability to finish off kills is... I was going to drop that play-by-play to you, but it looks like we're going to have an agreement to walk away from this one.
Yeah,
Doran
they dropped the play as well.
Yeah.
Dropped whatever argument they were having. No Meganar now, and Doran backing means that they're pretty confident to just go ahead and go for this. You notice the back timing of Dove. He doesn't have his teleport. He's running back to lane. There's a huge wave there, so
Yeah.
it's kind of like a perfect moment for Gen G to go for this. They identify it, and they will take it down.
They're going to be able to get this, and it doesn't look like KT Rolster can actually get the Mountain Drake in return because of the lane control that they had there. And look at Ruler and Life right now. They're going to rotate up, in fact, to make sure no one is here there, able to cut off anyone trying to pass down. Dove returned late, didn't have teleport. I think it's just came back on. And, like, now the question is, Gen G, can you get the both objectives in the opposite way? Sometimes it's the Olaf who gets the Drake super early so that they can get the Rift Herald. Might be able to do it in the opposite way now. With all the vision they have, too, granted by Ruler and Life in the river. It's a really nice setup here for them to grab that early control. Albeit very slow. 10:30 is the timer right now, but it's very difficult for KT to trade anything back at the moment.
Yeah, you know, this has been something that has plagued KT as well. From ahead or behind, they kind of just take it very slowly. You know, we saw the stat before the game started. They have the slowest game time of anybody in round 2. As speaking of which, though, very proactive play up on the top side, so I kind of caster blessed that one. That's actually a really valuable kill. They're going to be able to get so many plays with Olaf nowhere near the top side.
Well, one of the problems, though, with this is that, sure, you're able to get that pick, and it was really well executed, but it was also very high risk. If that fails, you look really silly here. Even though it succeeded, they had so much vision control over the Drake, and the one concern for Gen G was, if we try to push this Drake down right now, will they collapse in and kill us? We don't have vision of where Gideon is. The second you go for that gank, even though it's successful and does grab a lot of extra gold here, you do guarantee that that Drake goes over to Gen G, so they are ready to at least trade that back. And with the Rift Herald they already control, I think you're okay with this as Gen G. You know, it makes the follow-up such a simple choice.
Yeah, I mean, they'll certainly be happy to pick up that Mountain Drake for their squad. They don't have a tanky boy up on the top side, but that's okay. Still going to have a lot of guys that are building resistances in this lineup. And now with the Rift Heralds, you know, with the Olaf down on the bottom side and even spotting Gideon on the top side, this is a very simple push onto that bottom turret, and getting Ruler fed on Tristana is always a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, he's the only one that's really got a lead in this game in terms of gold right now, but Gen G have objective control, and it's not going to be a Cloud Soul, which is really important too, because that's going to push that, having that extra momentum and having the faster Soul Point being a huge impact in this game for them. You know, you get that tempo lead. I feel like it's super undervalued by a lot of teams, KT included. And KT have a composition where you want a team fight as soon as Gnar is able to really do so, and he is getting closer and closer to finishing his first item. So we're going to watch this pick again. You see that as soon as the SWAT comes through, like, immediately Klid is going towards the Drake. Like as soon as Doran goes in, before they even see Gideon, he's like, okay, well, I know where I'm going. Because it's so obvious, the play there. But yeah, I mean, I feel like the value that you're going to get, because we know it's not a Cloud Soul here too, it's so good for Gen G after they have that bottom control. You can swap the lanes back, get a lot of extra value here on the top side of the map. And KT, this Samira pick finally has its Immortal Shield Bow online. That's where you need to start to try to team fight here. But already Kraken Slayer is up, so it's not like you have an item spike advantage.
Yeah, you're definitely down on Ruler, but you know, right now, although they might like to, there's just nothing really to fight over, right? There's no objectives up right now. Even the next Rift Herald is quite a ways out. So you gotta wait at least until that happens, unless you can force some kind of fight.
And that's, yeah, that goes back to the trade for the top for the Drake. Like, why not actually try to force a fight around the Drake instead? Or try to take the Drake and get that advantage on your side to push the tempo better into your court, settling for a pick top side, which again could have failed. Like, imagine if they didn't get the pick top side. You'd feel real bad right now if you're KT. You still feel fairly bad, but less so.
That was just a good conversion. And I think getting Doran ahead in the side lane against this mostly untested Nico is still going to be valuable. I'm not sure how much, you know, how well KT could have fought over the Drake if they wanted to go onto the Olaf. But, you know, we'll never know in this case. And at least Gideon is getting stuff done in the other lanes. He's getting pretty fed himself, too.
Yeah.
You know, killing an assist is nothing to shake a stick at. And, you know, we talked about the difference in the builds, but having a Night Harvester this early on is like, man, you're going to start chunking people. And that's definitely going to be pretty good for this early to mid-game transition.
And I think he really needs to. And I think a common folly for, again, a lot of teams here in the LCK, including KT Rolster, is to say, well, this next Drake that's coming up in 80 seconds is a Cloud Drake. It's not that important for us having one solo Cloud Drake. I don't want to fight over this, but when you have your Nidalee hitting this spike right now in terms of her damage output, I think you want to force this fight 100%.
Yeah.
And look for the follow-up Samira damage, right? And like really try to take control of this game, because if you give this one up, like, what are you even playing for? What is your comp trying to do? Like, you have a huge opportunity here to force that fight on your terms. You have to take it, I think.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think if you can time it with the Meganar, and you know you're getting a ton of spikes very early on in this game, trying to take that fight early before the Orianna and the Tristana get too hard to handle is definitely going to be good for them. As you see, for now, both of the bottom lanes have just rotated up to the top side. So talking about Drake control and priority, they're not necessarily going to be in position, but you see some rotations now coming down. Gideon trying to help push this lane and prep for these objectives, as, by the way, we also have the Rift Herald that is being taken right now.
You have to fight for this too if you're KT. I mean, it's not as valuable as the Drake, arguably. It's definitely not as good as the first Herald, but you want the team fight. That's what you really want. That's what you're most interested in, more than anything else. And that's why Gen G are like, they start this first, force KT to rotate, and then KT don't follow, and that's the problem. So Gen G are very happy with this. If they started this fight first and got forced off of here, and then had to give this one to KT and had to get the Rift Herald, it wouldn't be as good. But they actually handled this so extremely well because they've forced KT into the wrong objective. KT don't get that team fight they want. And the lasting power of this Rift Herald is temporary, whereas this Cloud Drake is permanent. It's one step closer to the soul. So Gen G definitely get the better exchange here. And that gold difference is now completely nullified, down to 0.
Yeah, the stacking for the soul, I think, is the most important thing that you mentioned, right? Because they knew it was either Infernal or Ocean, and both of those souls are incredibly good for Gen G's composition. So getting one step closer is just huge. You can deal with the small amount of damage you're going to take from the Rift Herald, and, you know, the bit of gold you get from taking that objective anyway. So Gen G, I feel like they responded very nicely, and in a pretty good spot right now.
Yeah, Ruler is just getting so fed. He's going to grab a whole turret here after getting those bottom plates. So just so much money going into this Tristana. Super farmed. Has a great front line in the Olaf and arguably the Rel to make sure that he's going to be able to fight on his terms. KT have so much CC, like they have Scatter the Weak, right? They have the Gnar ultimate, they have Zeus on this Alistar to set up really big combos and do that damage to empower Samira's ultimate. But if we don't see that happen very soon, if Gen G just are able to continue to avoid fights, like a 2-kill game is not what KT wants right now. I'm worried about how much this comp has longevity when Gen G have so many great ways to just front to back after those initial CCs come through. And or will Syndra even be able to get in a position to hit a Scar of the Week?
Oh boy, Ruler, he goes into the Ruler spot.
There's
he
some
gets
CC.
popped. And that's another spear that's going to land, and that allows Noah to just hop on in and clean up the damage. KT are like, man, this is huge. I mean, they have this Rift Herald as well, so before it didn't have as much value, but now with 2 members down.
Not to mention everyone's grouped.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the kind of play you need. This is the kind of aggressive agency KT need to use to their advantage, because if you just simply sit back and wait and Gen G avoid every fight, you can never find this kind of value. So aggressive play here from Zeus pays off big time. It's a huge risk, but the reward is massive. And are they ahead enough from this play? No, but it gives them a little buffer here. It's going to give them mid-turret, which is extremely important for controlling vision around this Drake. That is a fight, once again, they want to take. And it feels like if you end up giving this Drake up or losing the fight around the Drake, it just becomes impossible to come back in a game like this. There's a ward here for Zeus, really nice vision control, and he sees his opportunity, he takes it, just goes straight in for the headbutt pull, insta blow up on the AD carry, which means there's no way to try to turn this fight, even under turret. And that's an easy pop from Noah, as you say. Cleaning it up. Great start here for KT after what, or a great follow-up after what was a rough start.
Yeah. I'm not sure why Ruler's walking that way, to be honest. Zero vision in the river. There was nothing to take up on the top side of the map. There wasn't even farm in the top lane, right? Like, there's just no real reason to walk in that position. So just a little bit of a mistake, and KT immediately pounce on that. Anything they can get at this point in the game is going to be huge to try to push this lead before it gets a little bit too late.
Doran is just having a fun time down here. He's trying his best to take this game into his own hands. And, you know, in the side lane, he's having a decent time. He's going to be able to get this turret with his Demolish. We've talked a lot about the setups for combos and, you know, how picks can work for KT, but Doran can just be straight up a hero and catch some of these very squishy targets on the side of Genji. If you can force Klid to use his Ragnarok early, I mean, there's so many ways you can team fight with Doran. He is being so proactive at trying to find anyone he can out of position. And if his Narbar is full and he's ready to Mega Gnar, like, you cannot be where life just was there. Obviously, right now he doesn't have it, but just something to keep in mind for later on.
He's getting it pretty early right now, actually. I think he just wants to sit there and try not to proc it.
Yeah.
At this point in time. Still got about 30 seconds.
Ooh, that's
okay.
a huge get.
Oh, boy. We got 20 seconds until the Infernal Drake. Can't be missing ults like that.
Yeah, this is massive for KT.
I mean, even if he hit that, Doran just pops Mega Gnar, and he's like, yeah, laughing in his face.
Okay, Genji, you can't let Genji do this to you twice. You can't just go, oh, okay, well, you got that one, we'll take this one. You know, that's what happened last time. Genji were like, oh, okay, yeah, you want a second Rift Herald, we'll take the Drake that's more important. But this is what Genji is doing to avoid this fight. Oh, okay, you're going to take Drake? Well, we're going to head towards Baron. You have to deny it. Oh, you denied us, but you still haven't gotten that Infernal Drake. Now BDD is 2/3 of the way back on his ultimate. It was a really nice time by here, but I don't think it's going to be enough to take this Drake. I think Genji are just simply going to have to let this one go and try to find value elsewhere on the map. But it was a nice delay.
Yeah, you know, they did pretty much what they could in that position. And at the end of the day, though, certainly KT, you know, they're giving Genji a run for their money. It's funny that coming into this match, it was like, man, KT on a 5-game losing streak. Genji, they usually crush the bottom table teams. They just crushed Dom1 Kia 2-1. They're looking as good as they ever have in spring. Yet, here we are in game number 1. And KT are actually giving them a real run for their money. I kind of like where the LCK is at in, you know, at least making interesting games, but what does it mean for Genji?
I think there's a lot of people who look at Dom1 Kia and their run and Genji dropping a few games while being number 2 as like saying that we only have one team in the LCK or the depth of the LCK isn't that good. I mean, even the top teams lose games to bottom teams, so does that mean the region is even strong? No, I think that actually proves the region is strong. The world champion can lose to Fredit Brion. Genji can take a game off them when they look really unstoppable. This region is competitive.
Yeah.
No bias or anything, but...
Oh, yes, of course not.
But, I mean, you know, in this game, too, I think it's a compositional issue, and Genji have made some small mistakes, but this is where KT is supposed to be ahead, right? They're supposed to be ahead in the early game. That's what their comp needs. See if they can keep it going, though, is the real question, Valdez, because, you know, this is going to start to fall off big time later on. Well, they haven't been able to take any team fights, you know, with this Nidalee spike that they had. Genji doesn't play ring around the Rosie this whole time. And because they have the tempo, this is why we have to talk about tempo for Drakes. Normally, you're never okay giving an Infernal like this when Infernal Soul is available, but if you're up 2, you have that extra buffer. So Genji can just walk away from this fight. People are like, well, why are the casters saying they need to get 2 Drakes? They're 2 away from the Soul. Well, the reason why is because now you can give up this Infernal Drake when you lost your Shockwave and say, well, I mean, this is not ideal, but it's not that big of an issue. If you had given the first 2 Drakes to KT, Now KT's on Soul Point with his Infernal Drake with their composition. It's a much worse situation.
Yeah, for sure. It's still a huge win for KT, right? Because they do have, you know, a ton of players in their lineup, champions rather, that are going to really love even just a couple of Infernal Drakes, but definitely could be worse. And that's part of the reason why, you know, Olaf is continuing to see play here in the LCK. You get that early Drake control, keeps you in the game for longer, allows your scaling composition to do exactly that, and I think that's maybe, you know, the main crux of what you were saying. And this does mean that at this point, though, Gen G aren't going to be the ones that are like looking to really force fights right now. And KT as a team, you know, they haven't been the best at forcing fights and really pressing their advantages. They did decently in the mid lane where they found those 2 picks. That was a little mistake from Ruler, but they need to get more. You know, they need to press the issue as much as possible.
Now, they actually got a huge swath of vision control here, and they're going to try to sweep out this final ward. I think they could actually make a Baron play here. It is going to be super tight. But it looks like they just want to make it look like they are, sell the idea, try to force the fight that way. I mean, they are considering it. There's a lot of pings here.
Yep.
I mean, when you have this much vision control and the timings of the back here for Gen G, like, I think you just get a free Baron here as KT. I mean, it's not free. You have to really work at that vision. But they're going to get it here, I think.
Yeah, they know now. And there is that one ward that they didn't clear out. So Life, actually, or rather Rascal, of course, is able to come on in here. And I think they're still a little bit late. You know, the Shockwave comes in, but that's not going to outsmite the Nidalee, who's level 14 at this point in time.
What a great play from KT Rolster. And now you actually have the ability to use this Baron buff to try to get control over the next Infernal Drake. And this deficit that they had in terms of where the game state is kind of gets nullified by this advantage. If you can get both Infernal Drakes, your composition starts to have a lot more staying power than it did otherwise. Doran really is out there with no Mega Gnar.
Yeah, he's got to build it up right now because we got 40 seconds until this next Infernal Drake comes up. And now, with that really great Baron rush from KT, Gen G are in a rough spot. They got to fight against Baroned up KT's lineup right now where they're hitting all their item spikes and you don't really necessarily want to fight. Speaking of which, Mega Gnar, as Ruler is going to have to flash away, is able to push them out, but the rest of his team is just left out to dry. KT sweep them up in the river and make it look really easy. In goes the Nidalee, kills the Tristana, and that's a triple kill now for Noah, as only BDD survives, and KT are beginning to just stomp them here in this game.
BDD has to be so careful here. Zeus had flash, but I mean, why are you there if you're Gen G? Like, why are you willing to take a fight here? They have Baron buff. Now they're going to get more than just an Infernal Drake. You know, they're going to get a whole lot of damage done in multiple lanes. They're going to get this inner turret. They get the Infernal Drake for free. And sure, you know, for the beginning of that fight, when I said I'm a little bit worried about Doran being out without Mega Gnar, it was very clear from the outset that that was KT's whole game plan, is to take a Mega Gnar engage once he got it in that brush, exactly where Gen G stand. And now that he has it, you can't be here if you're Ruler. Like, where are you at? He flashes to the left, and the rest of the team fight is just a wash.
BDD's not even there.
He's not here. He's on the side.
He's teleporting.
It's a 5v3 fight. And, you know, the engage was solid from Doran onto the Tristana. And then you're able to just come back in and clean everything up. The Scour, the weak follow-up was good. KT's execution of this team comp is great, but Gen G need to work on their positioning.
Yeah, that's pretty clear at this point in time. Kind of reminds me when they went down to Live Sandbox, right? Where it's like, man, Live Sandbox looked great, but at the same time, what are you doing, Gen G? How can this be happening? Right now in this game, they should be sticking together as 5 and never deviating out of that and moving away from each other, never starting fights or getting caught out when you don't have all 5 members. But all of those things happened. KT were able to force it very nicely.
So many wards here. The zombie wards are so worth right now. Like, there's so many things you have to clear here if you're Gen G, including the traps now. I mean, if you want to get really into the nitty-gritty here for Gideon, to spot them out so that you can't flank, you can't catch anyone when KT do decide to split. And when KT are together, you have to be so careful. It's the second time Ruler gets caught. And as the Baron buff ticks away, you know, they turn that into that second Infernal Drake I was talking about. And again, imagine if Gen G did not control those first 2 Drakes with the Olaf. We'd be looking at an Infernal Soul right now.
Game would be over.
Yeah. Like, Gen G played the early game super well. And I feel like if they could just tighten up some of their positioning, they are still favored to take this game. Like, even with KT taking a Baron and taking those 2 Infernal Drakes, I look at Gen G and I look at the players on this team and what their comp is capable of in the late game. And I would still say, like, if someone actually asked me right now, who do you think is going to win this game? I'd say, I think, yeah, even though it's 0-8, I think Gen G will probably close it out. But it feels harder and harder every single time you make a mistake like that. I mean, look at the gold leads now across the board. Samira is only 1 gold ahead at the moment. Make that negative 13. But, you know, if you keep getting hit by chain CC and your AD carry is standing in KT's range to just get blown up. Like, now Samira's 4-0-1. Okay, despite a rough laning phase.
Yeah.
Those items are coming online. She's got a stopwatch now, too.
We're getting to the point where, as KT with double Infernal Drake, you don't really care about the scaling on Gen G anymore. Also, like, the Nico, cute pick in the top side, but, you know, imagine if you had something a little bit more aggressive. Maybe you have another out as Gen G, like a split push or like a Camille or something. Then maybe you're putting pressure on Doran. You're pulling KT apart so they can't just take super easy 5v5 team fights from ahead. But instead, we just have this Nico that sits here, and has he even used Pop Blossom? Like,
no, I don't think so. I was literally going to say that. Like, where's been the impact in the team fights?
Maybe the last fight, but it doesn't matter when it's 5v3. Right?
Yeah, and the thing is, like, he's not getting much value in side lane either at this stage. So you think about all the other options that were available. The GP, right? You know, the Jace that he could have picked even potentially here, which would have given this comp so much more poke. It's I don't want to say mind-boggling or even baffling, but it just feels unnecessary to try to reinvent the wheel here, especially leading into playoffs like this.
Yeah. If
Gen G lose this series, or even if they lose a map, and I'm going to meme myself about the maps, but even if they lose a game here, right, if they get the +1 instead of the +2 in this series, that could cost them second place. Like, it's just that tight between them and Honda Life Esports right now.
Yep.
So you can't, I mean, you might say, well, they're messing around, it's a weaker team in KT. You can't be messing around right now. You skip a whole playoff round. Like, we're watching a whole playoff round, potentially extra for Gen G have to be played. If they
an extra best of 5. You show so much of your strategy in a best of 5 too. Like, you don't want to have to show the next opponent, which is probably, if you're not making it, Hama Life or Damwon Kia. You don't want to be showing those two teams what your strategies are in best of 5s and how you handle certain situations.
Yeah, would you rather play best of 5 against DRX, or would you rather 2-0 KT Rollster with the standard comp? I mean, again, I think Gen G still have a really good chance of winning this game because of their composition, but
we need to see a real team fight,
yes.
Right?
We really do. And Gen G do have the fast track on this Drake right now, which is quite huge.
Yeah. It seems like this time they've kind of got their ducks in a row, except Brascal just took half his health and damage. That's kind of the damage that KT have right now at this point in the game with 2 Infernal Drakes.
Yeah, you hit someone with a spear, and then suddenly you're ready to put Gnar in position to set up for...
Oh, they're just giving it away.
Oh, man, I don't know if you could do this. They're trying to do this thing again where they're like, oh, you'll take that one and I'll take a Baron. And KT did that once with the Rift Herald trade. They are not going to do it again. They're going to get the Drake and deny this. And Gen G have to get out of dodge here. You can avoid fights to a certain extent, but now they have 3 Infernals. And this issue is just compounding upon itself so quickly.
Oh, boy.
Oh, no.
Oh, God. Not like this. Somebody's got a face check, and it was life and Clid.
That might be game, Valis.
That is game. There's nothing that BDD can do. I mean, he's got to try to TP and stop the wave, but they see it coming, so it's going to look pretty hilarious, but that's what you got to do in this kind of situation. BDD will go down. That's the ace, and KT will take a game in about 33 minutes over Gen G. Not a sentence I thought I'd be saying at this point.
No, I don't think anyone thought that was going to be the case. We never got to see Gen G's composition come online. KT Rollster playing their composition very well, punishing some very clear positional errors from Gen G, from Ruler in particular. You start to get the damage stacked up. Nidalee gets an early Night Harvester, and things go crazy.
0 kills for Gen G. That is not acceptable. KT stomped them here in game